Bandwidth for MacBreak is brought to you by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
Welcome back to MacBreak Studio. I'm your host, Mark Spencer, and with me today is the illustrious Steve Martin.
Glad to be back.
Happy to see you.
We're going to talk about the Ripple tool today.
The Ripple tool. I know the Ripple tool has a special place in your heart.
Yes, it does.
All right.
They named it after Ripple wine.
Ah. Oh, I thought maybe they named it after Ripple training.
No. So we're going to use this tool to actually make changes to the edit. And the great thing about this tool is it saves a lot of time, but in some situations it actually can cause frustration if you don't know how it works.
Yes.
So I'm going to go through and alleviate some of those frustrations with this little episode.
Please, enlighten us.
All right, so the first thing is we want to talk about how the Ripple tool works. For those who aren't familiar with it, it's the tool that essentially does trims on one side of an edit point. RR is a keyboard shortcut to call it up. And I'm going to take the tool, and when you place the tool on the edit point, now notice the little X next to it. Right now it's confused.
I'm not going to work.
That won't work, so X. But as soon as you move it over cut point, the X goes away. And you have a little tail that points the direction.
It
flips. The direction it's pointing is a clip you're about ready to adjust.
Okay.
The great thing about this tool is if I select an edit point, notice the audio and video are selected because they're in sync, right? Now let's say
because they're linked clips, right?
Because they're linked, they both select together, the audio and video, which is the default behavior in Final Cut Pro.
Okay.
So if I, let's say, want to trim 15 frames off this tail, I'm just going to grab and start dragging to, to the, in this case, the left. And by the way, a keyboard shortcut, sometimes you want to get to exactly 15. It kind of jumps from 17 to 15. If you hold down the Command key in Final Cut, that's like clutching down the dragging. It's a clutch.
Go very slowly.
It's a gear down. So Command to gear. See? Nice little feature, clutching. Yeah, so there you go, 15 frames. Now notice how all the clips kind of rippled or pulled up. Okay.
So it shortened these clips, the video and the audio, and it deleted the resulting gap in just one step.
Right. Now a lot of people are familiar with that. Now where the tool kind of runs into some issues is when you have your timeline set up like this. Now notice here I have audio checkerboarded. Like in this case maybe I have dialogue on 1 and 2 and then dialogue placed in 3 and 4 and then back 1 and 2. Typically in say narrative type of work, editors will prefer to stack or checkerboard their audio. It gives them more flexibility in terms of creating pacing for the audio.
So maybe one person would be on A1 and A2 and a different person on A3 and A4.
Right. It makes it easier to do split edits and to like have characters talking over one another.
Right.
It's much easier to deal with that type of editorial workflow when the tracks are staggered like this.
Checkerboarding the audio.
Right.
Got it.
Now there's a real problem using the Ripple tool when you have it in this configuration.
How so?
Well, for example, let's say I wanted to trim the out point of this shot right here. If I click, notice it's selecting the video and audio.
All right,
it's linked,
just like before.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some frames to this. But before I do, one thing you have to understand about the Ripple tool is that it only affects clips to the right side of the edit point.
Okay.
Clips that aren't to the right side of the edit point will not be affected.
They won't move at all.
They will not move at all.
Okay.
Exactly. So in this situation, notice here, I'm about ready to adjust the edit point here. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to move it 15 frames later.
Okay.
Okay, and I just threw things out of sync as indicated by the red flag.
Those went out of sync because this audio clip here wasn't fully to the right of that edit point.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
So if you look here, where's the edit point? In the audio, the edit point's over here, but the audio for this clip is still before this edit point, so it didn't move.
So that whole chunk stayed where it was.
It stayed, and then and hence threw everything out of sync.
Right.
So in order to deal with this, you just got to add a modifier key.
Okay.
So what you're going to do is hold down the Command key, and I'm going to select the gap. Notice I'm able to select the gap as if it was a clip.
Interesting. As if it were a clip. You've got that selected right there, that little area of nothing.
Of nothing, yeah. So when you drag with the Ripple tool, notice now I'm affecting not only the clip video audio out point, but notice the gap is changing size as well.
You can see these outlines around the gaps as well.
Right. In fact, I'm going to turn off snapping, but notice the gap size is being stretched to accommodate that. So now when I let go, pushes everything down, and everything stays in sync.
Great. Otherwise, you're sitting there with that out of sync thing, and you're just trying to slip or move into sync and just creating a mess.
It's a mess. That's when I just leave and let the assistant editor fix it. But
lucky for you. Yeah.
So in this case, that's one way to solve the problem. The other one is, notice here after this edit, it left kind of a gap at the beginning of the audio, the 7C cam audio.
Right, like it had before.
Yeah, well, it had a gap, but let's say I wanted to extend the in point of the audio to the cut point. At the same time, I was extending the audio and the video for the 2327 Ducati output.
Okay,
so
you could do those at the same time.
Yes, it would be called what we call an asymmetric trim.
Asymmetric trim.
Right. I think there's like one line in the manual about it.
Yeah.
You can do this, and then I'll explain it.
Okay.
But basically it involves, instead of selecting the gap, I'm going to hold down the Command key and select the in point.
Do you see? It's switching into the other side.
See, what's happening now is it's almost like one side's being pulled this way, the other side's being pulled this way.
So wait a minute.
Opposite
directions, but everything's going to be getting longer, right? But in opposite directions?
But in opposite directions. So the idea is, if I drag this out point to the right, I'm adding frames to the out point, but I'm also adding frames to the in point of the audio.
Okay.
Oh, let me do that again. Let me try this. So select the edit point, Command click, and then drag, and notice the in point is being affected at the same time the out point
of the other side.
Of the other side are being affected. Of course, I'm at a media limit here, but you can I can't go any further than that audio. Okay. But you can see that both sides of the edit point
by the same number of frames.
By the same number of frames.
So if you extended this one by 10 frames, the audio here will get longer by 10 frames.
Exactly. That's called an asymmetrical trim.
I never understood what that asymmetrical trim did. That's great.
Yeah, so in terms of keeping things in sync, you can select this side or Command click and select that side of the edit.
Awesome.
And keep things in sync.
Okay. Very, very helpful. Where can I learn more?
Well, rippletraining.com. We have a ton of Final Cut Pro tutorials, and we got a Final Cut Pro 7 tutorial coming out very soon, if not by the time you're watching this.
Okay, so maybe here already.
Exactly, and we have those kinds of tricks and more on our site.
Great, Ripple Training. Great. Steve, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching MacBreak Studio.